All right, everybody, we're going to go ahead and get started for the afternoon session. Our next presenter is the Director of IT for Consolidated Utility District, Mr. Mike Sumner. He's going to go over a really important issue that's facing all utilities now. So I'm going to turn it over to him and let him take it from there.
Thank you very much. I know everybody's had some food. That was good chicken. That macaroni and cheese hit the spot for me. I don't know about you. I'm curious about our audience today. How many board members do we have here today? All right. Leadership positions. All right. Everybody else. Non-leadership positions, engineers, administrative staff. Let's see your hands. Okay. So there's a lot of leadership, a lot of board members here today. I want to thank you for having us come and share some of our learnings, our experience. I've been at CUD for about 6 years, next week actually. I'm thankful for the position. CUD is, let's talk a little bit about CUD. I know I see Roger here. I see one of our board members here. I think there's a few. Glad you're here. CUD is a utility. We have around just over 70,000 connections, customers. We have about 135 or so employees. 6 years ago when I started, we were around 56,000 connections or so, about 57-ish. We've grown quite a bit in the last 5 or 6 years. And I share that with you so that you can, in your mind, think about your cybersecurity approach as we work through this. And I realize this is after lunch. And so I'm not going to try to inject death by PowerPoint today. I asked him for this because this is really the meat of it. When I'm done making some drawings and talking through some things with everybody from a cybersecurity perspective, feel free to take pictures. Feel free to come up and get my email. We're here to help each other. CUD has grown quite a bit. We have around 12 to 13,000 attempts at our firewall every month, around 150,000 a year attempts at our firewall trying to get into the CUD environment. That's just the firewall. Now let's talk about email. Every month, we have 8,000 attempts of the spam filters that are allowed through, 8,000 attempts of phishing, ransomware, some sort of attempt to get into our organization every month. 8,000 via email. We have around 5,000 processed incoming, outgoing emails every day. So when you think about the attack plane and where someone's going to attack, 90% of the time when there's a cybersecurity issue, it's at the layer that we call people. It's us. Recently, we had a text message go out to our GIS manager, and it was from the president of our board. Well, it looked like it was from the president of our board. Some of you may have gotten emails similar. He got a text message saying, "Hey, it's Carter Woodruff. hey, we're doing this meeting and yada, yada. Are you available? And our GIS manager, Brandon, said, sure, yeah, what's going on? And then he went on to say that he's meeting with these people and needed some Apple cards, right? And Brandon immediately got me involved, and it didn't take long to figure out that wasn't actually the president of our board. But if you think about this, Brandon has been employed at CUD for right at 1 year. He got a text message to his work cell phone. And this text message knew where he worked, his work cell phone number, and that they needed to masquerade as the president of the board. Think about the research that went into that. How many of y'all have gotten an email or a text from the U.S. Postal Service recently saying, hey, I need this or that from you? Yeah, it happens constantly. And I'll share some statistics in a minute. So when I was talked to, as it related to presenting at the conference, first of all, I want to say thank you. I appreciate you having us. CUD works really hard to be number one in innovation. And so to have us here and to talk about cybersecurity means a lot. But obviously, when I think about this side of the state, I think about the black bears. And so I wanted to approach that as we think about the presentation today. Let's go through some of this. All right, so here's some statistics. 25% of water and wastewater operators were surveyed and asked if they were have they ever done some sort of a cybersecurity assessment. Less than 25% said yes. Okay. How many of you have had a cybersecurity assessment? I mean, that's a really good, what we try to do at CUD is every 4 to 5 years, we have a physical, at least a physical. And then we do a roundtable every other year, so that every 4 years we've got something going on. We've assessed, we've taken their information, and we've worked to close those attack metrics. The average cost from a cybersecurity event is $2 million. That's a lot of money. There are a lot of people here today involved in getting cybersecurity insurance, right? And there was a time when cybersecurity insurance was easy to get. That is not the case today. Now there's very in-depth, detailed questions on the cybersecurity front. Do you have this enabled? What about your business continuity plan? What about your disaster recovery? What about your multi-factor authentication? Lots of buzzwords. 85% of cybersecurity leaders are saying that it's AI-powered attacks that are hitting them. Well, if it's AI fighting us, trying to get our data, and that's what they want. Their question is, why are we fighting this cybersecurity battle? They want your data. They want to hijack your data and force you to pay ransom. They want to make you look bad. They want to try to cast doubt in customers' eyes. But essentially, they want your data because that means money. And they're fighting with AI. So it's our job to make sure that we fight with AI as well. In 2023, we saw a 72% increase in cybersecurity attacks. I was looking, doing some background research, and you see right here at the top, June and October of 2022, there were 3 bear attacks that were noted recently in this area. Last night, we went down to Cherokee Grill. We had a really nice dinner, Roger and myself, my sweetheart, and a couple other people. And we were walking back, and we saw the cops, and they had their sirens going. And you could hear the buzz of people talking, and there was a bear last night, right down there. We walked around the corner, sure enough, running across the parking lot and across the street, and then down into another parking lot went a bear. They threw the fireworks and tried to scare it away. It's just a part of life here. It's just a part of your life now at work. You're getting emails right now. You're getting text messages right now trying to get you to compromise and just click. One of the best ones that I have had recently was to myself. I received a call from my bank, Regions, and it was from Regions. So number one, they spoofed Regions' number. And they said that my card was being used at a Home Depot in Louisiana. And they were calling to Stop that, and they were going to issue me a new card. Okay? I went through the process of talking with the person. I'm listening to language. I'm listening for accent. I'm listening for a lot of things that you're thinking about when someone's calling you. You know, they're going to verify who you say you are. They knew where I worked. They had my cell phone. They verified with my security questions, which I don't know if they got lucky and guessed or what. We got all the way to the last part of the conversation where they wanted to issue a new card, and they asked me for my PIN. I stopped the call. I hung up. I called Regions Security, and that was not them. Okay? This happened about 3 months ago. Now, imagine that was a human. Imagine the power behind that when AI becomes the driver behind it. It's going to be really hard to detect. The point of this slide is attacks are always present. They're always around. They're always trying to get you. You've heard the saying, you don't have to be faster than the bear. You just have to be faster than your friend. And as funny as it is, that's really the heart of what I'm trying to send you away with today. We're going to highlight a few areas that if we focus our time, effort, and resources on those few areas, you're faster than your friend. Because all you want to do is make it hard to get through the door, your attack surface. And we'll talk about that. Predators are real. 40% of businesses experience cybersecurity breaches. Last year, CUD had a bit of a cybersecurity alarm. Thankfully, we didn't get hit bad. We had something happen to our servers and we stopped it, and everything was back on and ready to go in the morning. But that particular week, Murfreesboro Medical Clinic experienced a similar outage by, we think, the same predator, and it took them down for 2 weeks. And they were faced with the decision, do we pay ransomware or do we let it go and restore? It's right there in our town, Murfreesboro. And when it happened that day, I called their IT director and left a message and said, hey, if you need any help, let us know. But they were neck deep in the battle. And as you can see, they were, imagine being out of pocket, no billing, no website, no nothing for 2 weeks. I don't know if you guys remember, in 2021, there was a town called Oldsmar, Florida. It was the week of the Super Bowl. Tampa Bay Bucks were in the Super Bowl. I think Tom Brady won it that year. But with all eyes on Tampa, somebody did some sort of a remote control through an app called TeamViewer, and the operator saw the mouse moving, thankfully, and they were modifying, I think it was sodium chloride, the lye, to go from 100 parts per million to 11,100 parts per million, and they stopped it. But it made huge news. And thankfully, since that time, there's been a lot of awareness from CISA, the Homeland Security, and resources provided to us, which I'll provide to everybody here in just a bit, on some of those resources and what we can do going forward. And I say all this to say, it's just ever present. It didn't used to be a threat in the water industry. Why would you even want to hop onto an OT SCADA network and modify sodium chloride to 11,100 parts per million? Why? Control, threat, panic. It's real. Okay. So, the best way that we can do this, and I think from here on out, I may just leave this presentation kind of where it's at, but it's layered security. If 90% of the battle that we're fighting is at the people layer, then let's throw our resources, time, and money at the layers that are most exposed. Okay? And let's talk about them. When I talk to our leadership at CUD about technology, about an approach to being innovative, about protecting our data, we talk about it in 3 terms: people, process, and technology. PPT. All right.
I like to try to
You can take notes or you can come up and
escalate
take a
for
picture later. Doesn't matter to me. I'll be glad to help you through this. But if you focus on the high level 3 layered approach, it really helps you think about where to throw your money and resources quickly. So when I asked earlier, how many of you have had a recent cybersecurity assessment? Definitely less than 25%. All right, so I'm just going to write that down here below. Cybersecurity assessment. When I was hired by CUD 6 years ago, I was interviewed by at that time we had a different general manager. And Bill and HR and a few other leaders there interviewed me and asked me what's the first thing I would do. And I said, the first 2 to 4 weeks, if you could just give me an assessment period, I'd like to see where you're at. You heard me state some statistics about how many emails we get per day. You heard me talk about how many firewall threats we get per month, per year. I know how many connections we have. I know how many employees we have. I know how many employee endpoints we have, whether it's a cell phone. Nowadays, that's real. Let's talk about that for a second. While you guys were coming in the room, I opened up an app on my phone and I scanned the room. And I can tell you through this app how many of you sitting here need to look at your phone and modify your Bluetooth security just a little bit. And that's only an app that I downloaded for free. So the point is, it used to just be computers, desktops, laptops, and nowadays it's not. You've got GPS positioning poles, right? You got SCADA equipment out there. You've got these things in our hands and pockets 24/7, and we're on them a lot. And all it takes is one layer. So let's talk about it. The people layer. What can we do at the people layer to help keep us secure? If 90%, what can I do right here? Anybody? First thing we can do. I think I heard it. Did someone say train? Yeah. Number 1, let's train our people. We use something at CUD called, one of our tools is phishingbox.com with a PH, phishingbox.com. And it will create a campaign that comes through your email. And we use Microsoft Office 365, like many of you do, in the cloud. And that Microsoft provides a layer of protection. Then we have another layer called Dark Trace that provides another layer of protection. So this email from PhishingBox goes through the 2 layers of protection. Remember, our focus is this 90%, and it tests the employees. When I create a campaign, I'll send it out, and I can tell how many people opened the email, how many people clicked on the email, and if they click all the way through, they get trained immediately. Because it's really easy to do. I've gotten so many emails and calls and texts to my cell. Hey, Mike, I just got this email. It's from so-and-so that I do business with a lot of times, but I'm not expecting this file. Well, let me give you that scenario. If you ever get that, delete it. The easy part of training at the 90% level for people is don't open it, delete it, because then you can call the person. Hey, did you send me this email? I know we send PDFs back and forth all the time, but I wasn't expecting this and I just got it and it looks like from you and there's something different in the email address because you're looking. Training. Always thinking. So let's talk about that for a second. Paradigm shift. I talked about me running an app that scans the room and I can tell how far away the Bluetooth compromised possibility of a phone is. It tells me in meters. And, with Bluetooth, it's relatively close, but it can go up to 50 meters sometimes, depending on a lot of factors. All that to say, if 90% of our attacks are here, let's paradigm shift. If you get an email and you're curious and you're not sure, guess what? They can resend the email. Well, it's got an important file on it. Does it? Are you sure? How do you know? Don't open it. It's that simple. Next layer on the board, you see the human layer. CUD has spent a lot of money with consultants, and we have a network consultant that comes in, and we look at our firewalls, our switches, and our access controls a lot. So let's put this down here at technology, firewalls. We also have something called IDS, IPS, intrusion detection and intrusion prevention. So I have two layers that has to go through one layer and two layer to get into CUD, in and out. I have two layers for email to get here. I've got Office 365 and I've got Darktrace. Two layers. If you would employ just these two things, now you're protecting your perimeter, and you're protecting emails coming and going from your organization. How many here know well enough to say we do have a firewall in place? All right. Okay, so about 40%. Do you get, as a leader, do you get any sort of reporting on the firewalls? I see some. Fewer hands. And that's my whole point. If you could just walk away from here thinking about the 90%, where do we fight our battle? What can we do leaving here today to be more cybersecurity aware and secure? Number one, come in and assess. When I hired in at CUD, I assessed for about 2.5 weeks. I looked at every layer. There's technology layers called the OSI model, and I broke it down into layers. There's 7 of them, and some people call people layer the 8th layer. Find somebody, an organization, a vendor of trust that can come in and just have a look. It's going to cost you probably about, their hourly cost is probably going to be in the $150 an hour range. It's going to be pricey. And they'll spend 3 to 4 days on site and then 2 to 3 days developing a report. But then you walk away with a report that tells you exactly what you need to do next at each layer. One of the first things we did when we came after that assessment is, during the assessment, I found out that there was an email group at CUD that belonged to billing. And this billing email group somehow had a Google Gmail added to it. No one added it. What we found out was, we did some discovery, and someone had compromised one of our Office 365 admin passwords because it was never changed. Added an admin. That admin, newly created, was down in South America. They then added themselves to various groups trying to get financial data. This had been going on for 6 months at CUD. We got legal involved. The board members may recall this when this all happened. And we assessed what kind of personal proprietary data might have or may not have been exposed. And thankfully, there was none of that, and we didn't have to take certain actions. But we took the actions we were supposed to take. We got insurance involved. And turns out, if we would have implemented early on a strong password policy, a complex password policy, coupled with something called MFA, multi-factor authentication. What does a complex password policy mean? If you were to tell people how many characters your password is, how many would say your password's probably 12 characters or less? Anybody? We shyly admit it, but it's easier to remember that way. Well, we found out through studies with Microsoft and other organizations that if your password is more than 12 characters, each character that goes past 12, and nowadays 14, makes the complexity and the challenge of guessing that password nearly infinite. So if you can get a passphrase like, "This year my dog has fleas." This year my dog has fleas. That's a long phrase. Or say you're a hunter. I got an 8-point buck, right? Just a phrase that means something to you that no one else can really get. And then you couple that with complexity, meaning characters, uppercase, lowercase. And then you add to that multi-factor authentication. So a password is something you know. Multi-factor authentication means we're going to add one more at least layer to it. And you guys get this sometimes with your banking apps. You'll go to log in and you'll get a text. And you have to verify the code that's in your text. That's MFA. So if you enable complexity with MFA, you are now faster than both the bear and your friend. Okay? That one step alone began to set CUD apart as we think about cybersecurity. Now, I'm knocking on wood because remember, 12,000, 13,000 attempts every month, 8,000 emails every month trying to get into our organization. It's a constant fight. We haven't won. I struggle sleeping sometimes because it's a constant battle. But in reality is, I know we've got layered protection. Office 365 spam controls, dark trace spam controls, firewalls, intrusion detection and prevention. We're actually replacing this firewall with 2 more. That'll be layered protection. So I literally will have 3 layers of protection at the firewall layer. And at CUD, we look at technology. You've heard me talk about people, process, and technology. We look at the process point too. So we train our employees. We have a cybersecurity plan, right? We have it documented. What is included in it? If you don't have one, let me know and we'll gladly help guide you through how to create one. We've got those plans in place. We've got password complexity policy in place. So all your policies and your plans are this other P over here. But this technology, that involves also things like operational technology, OT, SCADA. Everybody here is dealing with some sort of a SCADA control. In the example with Oldsmar, it was 11,100 for live, but in your example, it could be something else. How am I doing on time? We doing okay? Dang. We've been going at this for almost 30 minutes. The network layer, the perimeter layer, the endpoint layer, and really that's very important. If you can focus your efforts on the people and the endpoint layer, this is an endpoint. An endpoint is your phone. An endpoint is anything where data stops. So a laptop, a desktop, a server. CUD uses protection at endpoint levels that is also 2 layers of protection. For our mobile phones, we use Mobile Device Manager, MDM. Anybody else use that, MDM, Apple side? And then for other protection at the endpoint, we use CrowdStrike. Anybody use CrowdStrike? Okay. Do you use any sort of malware protection on your endpoints, on your computers? Anybody? Okay. It's a great place to start. I know Microsoft operating system comes with some of it already enabled, but we use CrowdStrike. And the reality with cybersecurity is it's going to take some resources, whether you get a vendor to come in and do a cybersecurity assessment and have some sort of a document that you can walk away with and take actions from. It's going to take some financial resources. It's going to take some financial resources for you to have a team, a person, someone to come and help implement some of these findings, right? But I promise you, the threats that are out there, it's far worth it to protect yourself. As you saw from some of these statistics, 40% increase over 2023 to 2024. It's pretty crazy. Application layer. Now, that's where code comes into play, where applications are created. Secure by design is something that we work with our vendors, but really that's out of a lot of our hands. We can't really do much about that, but you can ask the questions. So we don't really focus on that as much as in priority. The data layer, data encryption, backups, recovery. Now this is huge because if something does happen, you have to be able to recover it. And in your mind's eye, you may or may not know how long you have, like your billing system. How long can you go with your billing system being untouchable, unreachable. You know that? Do you know the answer to that? These are questions that CUD's worked really hard to try to answer. And, we went through our EOP and helped outline some of that. And some of our testing is around recovery time. Mission critical layers. So another thing CUD did when Roger came, Roger's our general manager. Some of you may have met him. We're thankful he's here. And one of the things he did was he sat us down. He said, I want to be number one in innovation, but we also want to be able to identify our critical applications. That's the first thing we did. And we now have a list. We have a strategic roadmap. And from that list, we take action. If you haven't identified it there at the bottom of this slide, you should. Cloud infrastructure, AI, artificial intelligence is real today. CUD uses CrowdStrike, which uses artificial intelligence as its back-end engine to fight against what's called zero-day attacks. You remember last year, CrowdStrike had an issue that caused them to be in the news. CUD was on some of that. Thankfully, it didn't affect us like it did many, because we really try to respond quickly, monitor 24/7, 365. We use AI at our dark trace layer to analyze emails coming into CUD. Of those 8,000 that are caught, there's about another 20,000 a month that don't even get to us because they're stopped. Okay. So if you could walk away from today and you could say to yourself, I'm going to focus on which layer to help protect from cybersecurity. Somebody tell me what it is. It's a human layer, 90%. Training, multi-factor authentication, strong password policy. Where are you going to spend the other 10%? What's your best return on investment? Any fantasy football players in here? Yeah. So it's great when you can spend 10% and get like 120% back. You get a player who's a rookie, or somebody's on the bench because they're injured and they're coming off injury and nobody's thinking about it, and you grab them and they earn you 25 points every week. And that's awesome. Sometimes things like this is a great investment. Cybersecurity audit, assessment. Have someone come in with a different set of eyes and, encourage your team. It's not a threat. This is just us protecting our data. Sometimes IT security folks, might get nervous, but there's no need for that. We're here to protect the data. Any questions from y'all in the audience? I know we've been going at this for about 40 minutes. Any questions you have about your cybersecurity plan, the way you're set up at your current utility, your size to our size, how to go from A to B? Yes, sir. So statistically speaking, they're outside the U.S. But now it has shifted, and it's going to continue to shift to AI. And wherever that button's being pushed initially to let unleash the AI, outside the country most of the time. But that's not to say that there's not some sort of a connection through other organizations that kind of come back to the U.S., unfortunately. Any other questions? Turn it off. When you are in a large environment like this, turn off your Bluetooth. If you're traveling through an airport, turn it off. Take yourself back 20 years. Think about doing an airdrop pictures. If that happens to be turned on for everyone, disable that. Bluetooth, disable it. It's really a paradigm, and that's a great question. It's a paradigm shift. Our life before technology was pretty easy, right? I was born in the 60s when we landed on the moon. I remember growing up in the 70s. You didn't have to worry about anything. I mean, you had one phone, and the cord from the phone would reach all the way from the kitchen to the bedroom. That was your technology. And when the TV needed turned, your dad would yell your name, and you'd come downstairs and turn the channel. Hey, Mike, go up on the roof and turn the antenna. All right. Been there. But that is not where we are today. Where we are today is we have to literally think about password applications. There's nothing wrong with that. Put an application on your phone, secure it with MFA, and you can then put your passwords in that app. But don't store your passwords on your notepad wide open. Recently, 2 days ago, 1 day ago, the Secretary of State in Colorado uploaded a file, an Excel file, on their government website. And one of the tabs was hidden. This tab had 63 of the 64 counties' BIOS passwords on it. Somebody downloaded the app and just selected unhide. Boom. We have to think different. You absolutely have to think different. There was another hand back here. Yeah, good question. The question is for specifically for personal. And to me, it really doesn't matter so much who anymore, because they all perform and they get their virus update files from similar sources. At work, we use CrowdStrike, and that really takes it to another level. It's AI-based monitoring that monitors patterns of behavior. For example, this week that we're in, we had an alert come out across to my other IT manager and myself, and we were alerted that a browser that one of our engineers in our engineering team, they had downloaded a browser that browser had been notified by some in the cybersecurity world that it was at risk. And so CrowdStrike isolated it and deleted it, and all this while we slept. Okay. We then followed up with the engineer, let them know, and be careful with your behavior. You just never know. They were just trying to download an app, get their work done. Turns out the app they downloaded wasn't secure. So for home, it doesn't matter to me in today's world. It's funny. I don't really own a personal computer anymore. I have a work computer and I have a personal cell phone. And my cell phone, there's a few different apps you can use on a cell phone to protect, but the Apple platform, thankfully, isn't as susceptible to those type of attacks. I'm more concerned about making sure I don't click on the wrong thing or giving my PIN out to regions when they call me. I almost did. Does that answer your question? My answer is it really doesn't matter as long as it's up to date and you keep those things, virus definition files up to date, as well as operating system updates up to date. Any other questions? Well, I will say it's good to be here. Thanks for having us. Brett's going to have a couple things for you in just a bit. Happy Halloween. If you need any resources, you can take a picture of this. CISA has all kinds of great resources out there.